Part 2, the aliens are here and we're gonna talk about it because this news is going all over the world and we need to figure out what's going on. Stick around. And welcome back everybody, another Friday, another episode, and perhaps you can hear it in my voice a little bit. I'm a little bit under the weather, but that doesn't matter. We're just gonna continue pumping out those episodes for you guys because I know there's some fans waiting out there that really would like to see what's going on in the world. So we're gonna help lay that puzzle back together again today, and this is part 2 of our UFO alien mystery. So we're gonna dive into that today and let's start up the presentation. So last week we finished up with this guy. I should do that. With this guy. His name is Jake Barber. We talked about him a lot. We also saw them doing a testimony about transporting an egg-shaped UFO for the US military as a freelance contractor. He also told something else significant in the interview that he did, that he transported an octagonal craft that had alien life force inside of him. And for such a cool, tough guy who has a military background and who's done a lot of mechanical things, you wouldn't expect the kind of testimony that he said. Let's dive into it and let's have a look about how it impacted him.
Simply seeing a non-human craft up close would be an intense experience in itself. But Barber says as he prepared to transport that so-called 8-gon from the pickup site to the drop site, something even more intense happened to him that would change his life forever.
This is one of the most profound experiences I've ever had in my life I'm about to share with you, so bear with me. So as I get closer to this pick site, I start feeling odd. I start feeling extremely emotional. And the closer I get, the more the emotion starts to overwhelm me. I feel this intense hybrid of sadness and happiness and beauty and song. And it was very disruptive to me because I had a very practical responsibility at the time to operate a helicopter in the mountains at night. And I began wondering what was wrong with me. It was late. Am I distressed? Am I tired? I don't know. But as I came over this object for the pick, there was this overwhelming sense of emotion.
Is it your feeling? Are you suddenly having a mental breakdown on the job?
No, I felt like something connected with me. I felt like something had tuned in to me and my soul and was providing me some sense of guidance on what to do and how profound what I was doing was. And it was so overwhelming that I began to cry. And then I'm confused as to why I'm crying at the same time. And then do I abort the mission? So I just did my best to focus on my particular cues when doing this type of work, and I got the load hooked up and I began flying away. And once it was just me and that object in between the pick and the drop site, there was about 20 miles in between, I felt like something was inside of me. I felt like I was possessed by the most beautiful spirit I'd ever been possessed by. And
was it loving?
It was loving. But there was a sense of sadness at the same time. And
had you ever had an experience like this before?
No, it was a very feminine energy, I'll tell you that. It felt like the spirit of God, but not in any masculine sense. And it wasn't like a soul, it was like a frequency that I was connected with. And whatever that force was since that night, it has stayed with me. And as crazy as this sounds, it's what's guiding me now. and it's what's providing protection for me.
So that's a very impactful statement from somebody who has such a severe military background and such an engineering mind. Those people are trained to keep their head level, and if something happens to them, they get overwhelmed by emotion or something like that, you know. Often there's people who are flying an airplane, or I mean, if they get depressed or something like that, it's forbidden for them to fly because, you know, they might cause an accident while doing that. So something to happen like this is extraordinary, and it's not really something that to be dismissed. Now, what he's talking about emotions. So we often don't understand ourselves when we think about where emotions come from, but in this case, it was clear that the emotion came from outside. Like if you feel possessed by a spirit that comes from an object that you're transporting, and that object has a non-terrestrial look about it, then it's obvious that you're dealing with something that is out there, that is not something from this world. And it really lifts a lid about our ideas about the green man from Mars. Is it really like that? It could be way more complicated. And now we understand a little bit more about what Jake Barber is doing. We understand that he is part of a program that is called Skywatcher. And Skywatcher, that's something that's been released for the last week. And so I want to look a little bit more into that. So let's have a look. Michael Battista, we don't know a lot about him because he just came forward in a video where he did a testimony. And Jake Barber talked about him also in the interview. He didn't name him though, but he talked about a Psionic Summoner. And what is a Psionic Summoner? A Psionic Summoner, in the testimony that Jake Barber gave, he's a person whose job it is to go into a trance state. You often see him with a black mask on. And in this trance state, they make a connection with an extraterrestrial vehicle. And in the particular case that Jake stated in his recent interview, that's where he said that there was a psionic summoner who was also flying a UAP craft that is perhaps from extraterrestrial origin, but he can fly it with his mind. And then when he did that, some other craft showed up, and then that was a craft that was of a non-extraterrestrial, or you could say a terrestrial origin, perhaps a military object that was attacking it. And so then the psionic operator had to get out of there. This is the kind of job that Michael Battista is doing, and he's doing it for the same program. He's doing it for the Skywatcher program. So yeah, he gave an interview, so let's have a look at that.
My name is Michael Battista. I'm 32 years old, and I'm a former U.S. Army Green Beret, 3rd Group.
And Mike, do you believe that a higher form of non-human intelligence has been visiting this planet?
Yes, I do.
When you make that statement, how confident are you that is true?
I'm extremely confident.
Do you feel like you believe that is true, or do you feel like you know that is true?
I know that it's true.
When did your experience with the phenomena begin?
The first experiences I was having was in my early teens, and it started to accelerate as I grew up. And as my time in the military was ending and I was getting out, it really accelerated at that point.
And when this happens, can you explain how it usually manifests or how you experience it?
It usually manifests as something anomalous in the sky, orbs, crafts, different pyramid-looking objects moving at extreme rates of speed and doing very angular movements.
When you do this, are there other people around? Do they actually see you doing this?
I have multiple witnesses that can testify that that is a fact.
And how many times do you feel like you've been able to summon something in the sky?
Anytime I want.
Anytime he wants. So obviously we're dealing here with a person that has certain kind of psychic powers or certain kind of telepathy or telekinesis power. So a person that is born with this kind of gifts and that has a certain DNA kind of line which makes them able to have something like that in their arsenal of abilities. So this is a very interesting discovery for the public, because the public that has been interested in certain kind of psychic phenomena or maybe paranormal activities or believes that there's more out there, you know, materialistic science has always told us that something like that is impossible because we cannot see it, and so we have proven that it doesn't exist. Well, with this phenomena, there's evidence coming forward that these two things are definitely linked, as these people say that they can summon them anytime they want. And that means that there's a connection with extraterrestrial at least crafts, but also perhaps beings out there that is on a spiritual level. Now, Michael Battista talked about that there's crafts out there such as a pyramid shaped craft or an orb-sized craft, and I've looked into the database, and here, let me show you what I found. This one, for instance. So look at this one. This is in Dubai, which is filmed in 2021. And this is clearly during a thunderstorm where a pyramid-shaped object is seen while it is thundering. And it's hiding in the clouds right now, but there you can see it. And you can see it moving upward. So let's wait for it. There you see it again. And it's closing into another pyramid. Now, that is very interesting. Now, what is that? But it's in our sky and it's in our space. Also, during the 2024 sightings around Christmas time, there was a news crew of ABC News that captured an actual orb. Now, orbs have been reported around the world for a long, long time. They've also often been described as light spheres or orbs or something like that. Well, now we have a very clear recording of what it actually looks like. And there we go. You can see it moving, and it's almost like something is in there. And it often reminds me of a Bible text that says spheres and spheres and spheres, which is often related to extraterrestrial vehicles. So very interesting footage, and this is filmed by a professional camera, not with some iPhone or something like that. Professional news camera, and they put it out on TV as well. And obviously we have known for some time that the FBI, for instance, has been interested in things like remote viewing, or perhaps that there's police forces who have been working with psychic people who can see like, oh well, this person, they were probably murdered here or buried there or something like that, and there have been results. And me, I've had an interview with a medium as well, which is on my channel. We talk mostly about what the future has installed and all of these things. So I definitely believe that there's more out there in this world, may it be of extraterrestrial origins or may it be of spiritual origins. Our world is way more complicated than they have always told it, and that is why you are watching the paradigm shift, because we're laying this puzzle. Now, one other person who has always claimed that this is the case is Stephen Greer. And he was in our last episode, and I mentioned already that he started the CE5 Contact, so that means the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind program, and he has made a protocol. And it's an app, so you can download the app. It's a paid app, by the way, so he has to fund his documentary somewhere, I guess. It's time for our sponsor, and our sponsor, of course, is druidsecret.com. You know, and I should have followed up my own advice, because I think you can hear it in my voice a little bit. I'm a little bit under the weather, got a little bit of a cold, and so I should have gone to the website. So you should have scrolled down and should have gone to over here, the health section, and there you have it. you have the artemic support. Now, the artemic support, that's one that you really want to get your immune system up. So in your daily practice, you can use it. It has some curcuma ingredients. It has some good quality vitamin C, but also for situations right now, you really need it instantly. What I should do is I should order the Artemic Rescue. I can take it immediately and get my immune system, get it a little bit of a boost and get rid of this cold immediately. So that's what I'm gonna do right after this episode. I hope you guys do it too. And when you do it, go to the checkout, use the code Paradigm Shift. You get a 5% discount, over 100 euros, you get free shipping. So go over there, go to druidsecret.com, use the code Paradigm Shift. You're helping out the show, you're helping out yourself, you're helping out a local mom and pop store. So with that said, let's continue back to a regular episode. But yeah, if you pay for the app, then you get a set of instructions, you get a set of protocols by which you can be a diplomat for extraterrestrial contact. There's experiments done by this, and they have done pictures, for instance, this one. Dr. Greer, he tweeted this one, which was at a CE5 Contact event in Boca Grande in Florida in 2010. I've taken that picture and I pulled it through AI just to have a little bit more of a clearer view of what it is that we're looking at. And when you look at it, you can definitely see that there's a kind of ring of an aura surrounding this particular entity, and you can also see the eyes, and definitely tall and slender, but also definitely of a non-physical appearance, of a non-physical nature. That makes it very interesting. So when we look at these beings, don't think that they're all just all kinds of flesh and blood and bones and hair and stuff like that as we have. Contact from the rest of the universe might just have a completely different way of appearance than you might think. So, and there's this other kind of event where also a picture was taken, and this is in one of his documentaries. So let's have a look at the fragment right now.
Had a great experience at Oracle and ended up having a healing experience.
We did these protocols and we got into meditation and things started to appear. And we're photographing it and we're seeing it and we're watching it and we're looking around and everyone's mouths are wide open. A lot of times these craft, they pop in and out so fast that to try and capture them on a telephoto lens is next to impossible.
While in deep meditation, they heard a being walking behind them, phasing in and out of 3D spacetime. Marconi adjusted his camera to shoot in the direction that Dr. Greer pointed. All of a sudden, a teardrop-shaped trans-dimensional object materialized between Ed Moen and a medical student, which was witnessed by most of the circle.
We reviewed my photos from that particular time, and there on the hillside, standing behind a man named Ed Moen, was this being that everyone's like, whoa, what is this?
This being has a very triangular face and has been seen on a number of our expeditions, and they are known as master healers.
Ed he wore hearing aids in both ears and he couldn't hear, half the things people were saying to him.
Had hearing loss, from high school. I would avoid parties and social settings where lots of people would gather together because it was uncomfortable not to be able to hear. Got to my room and I felt this draw to go back out there. So I got up and walked out and I saw this red light out in the middle of the desert about 300 feet away or so. I connected with it right away. I could feel it. I knew that it was aware of me and that it was indeed the thing that was calling me. So I invited it to come and hang out. At one point, Daniel heard me talking to this red orb and he couldn't believe it either. He went and got his camera and took a short video clip of this red orb.
He said that for the next 45 minutes he had a communication with them, and at the end of the conversation he said, "Do you think you can do something about my hearing?"
Got some sleep, and when I woke up, I went out to breakfast with some of the people in the group. I had hearing aids and they weren't with me at breakfast, and it was a very emotional event for me to discover that I could hear everything everyone was saying at the table, and not only at my table, but at tables away from me. And I haven't worn my hearing aids since. I had a hard time finding them to bring them here. They do a very good job, but not as good as the ETs did. It's changed my life, you know, it really has. And that's the part that gets me.
I didn't know this happened to him until I saw him the next day on the hammock. And he was just relating the story, and he was crying like a baby. And just to watch the emotion coming out of him was very moving, and he's had perfect hearing since then.
My takeaway from the event and from my experience with the ETs is that they've been in my life a long time, and I just didn't know it. It's such a beautiful world waiting for us.
And yeah, there's another fascinating story of a guy who had miraculous healing, you know, healing that came along with a deep emotional sense of something that happened from outside. And also notice how these bright red spheres are somehow part of this story, and somehow they have a communication with the sphere, like something is in it, or maybe the sphere is alive or something like that. Very interesting metaphysical observations. There's photos of extraterrestrials like this, but there's often photos of spirits like this as well in photos, which has often been captured. So it's very interesting footage to see, and interesting things happening here. Now, this isn't the only story. So, for instance, we have a story of this guy, and his name is Chris Bledsoe. And Chris, he has an amazing story. He was a UFO abductee, and he was taken with a extraterrestrial UFO craft that first it looked like 3 red orbs that he saw, and suddenly all of a sudden one of them, it changed into a tic-tac shaped UFO, and then he was taken aboard. Now, he didn't remember a lot of it, but afterwards he went into regression and he started finding out what he saw and what had emotionally upset him. Now Chris, he saw the end of the world basically. He saw Israel fighting with Iran with nuclear weapons, and he said that the aliens showed him that this would happen unless we change. So this is his message that he tells to the world. And all of this happened in 2007, but at some point he didn't want to do it anymore. At some point he was just overcome by all of the stress of all of the people from the outside who were responding to his story. People that said he was of the devil, when people of his church said him. People who were close to him who have all of a sudden who had all of these responses to his story. He was an outcast. He stopped telling his story. In 2012, he really didn't want to do it anymore. And so that is where he had another encounter. Let's have a look.
Easter of 2012. I'd had all I wanted anymore. You know, here I'm Richard Dreyfuss with the greatest desire to tell the world, but I'm defeated. The church, the community, family, everybody had defeated me. And I was ready to give up again. But yet I'm healed. And my kids are seeing it with me, my wife. So I went outside and yelled to the sky, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to tell anybody. Even though that's what you want me to do. And I knew they did. I knew it from the beginning. I was obsessed with telling it. And that night at 3 a.m, I heard this voice that said, arise, and it was in a manly, deep, deep voice. I heard it loud. And I jumped up out of bed at 3 a.m, and there was this shadowy figure at the end of the bed, more than one. The next thing I know, I'm outside, fully dressed. What they do to you, I don't know, but they can take you and kind of like put me in a trance and led me out to the forest.
Were these little beings, big beings?
No, there were tall ones.
Tall. Mm-hmm.
And but they're shadowy. It's like this misty thing you were describing last night. You see this shadowy kind of movement is there. It's like they're not phased into our world completely. And people think, oh my God, shadow beings, that's evil. Well, no, you know, I haven't been eaten yet, and I see them a lot, right? So they led me out to the dog kennel, where I wrote about this in the beginning of the book. All this is in the book in detail. And so, but that night at 9 o'clock, I went out and shouted, I'm going to quit. 3 a.m, I hear this voice. Next thing I know, I'm at the dog kennel. And they hand me this object. that a lot of people ask me about it. It's just, it looked like a Chihuahua dog that size with no legs or no head or no tail. It was just a sack of living flesh, bones, and felt prickly to my hands like a hedgehog maybe. And it's dark, and I got this in my hand, so I drop it on the ground, and I hear this voice say, "You pick this up, you must keep." So I pick it up and juggling this thing, not knowing what I've got. And so I opened a dog kennel and set it right in the kennel. I was right out at the kennels where it all happened originally, locked it in the door. And within less than a few seconds, this wind, this blast of air, I mean, it wasn't in the trees, it was localized in front of me. It was like somebody shot me with a blower, you know, air blower. And the wind was physical. So it pushed me over backwards. I mean, it was so forceful, it knocked me off my feet to my back on the ground. And I rolled in my stomach to get up and run. And there's no more cow. I mean, when this wind blew me over, I saw this cow come over me.
Cow or bull?
Bull.
Bull, yeah.
But you know, it was translucent, and I could see stars inside its body when it ran over, like up through it. And when I rolled in my stomach to get up and run, so I landed on my back. So I roll over, I'm facing behind me, and I'm going to run because I didn't know where this thing went. And there was no more cow there. There was a woman, this beautiful, glowing white dress, sparkles in it, flowing woman. And she looked at me and she said, "You know why I'm here." Just like that. And I knew, because when I went to bed that night, I felt defeated. And I shouted out to the heavens, you know, "Thank you for healing me, but you've ruined my whole family. My life is worse off now." And I'm saying this to the heavens. When she come that night, she said, "You can't quit. You got to do this. This is your burden you must bear." That's how she said it. "Your burden you must bear. You have to tell what you know. And if you do, I will help you. I'll help you with witnesses and with television, and you'll be able to share us with other people and let you film us with it." And that was in 2012. And immediately, for the first 5 years, I had no photos, no videos, couldn't get it. Every time I go out and try, my camera would not work or it would malfunction, the chip. I have one camera that doesn't work at all. It takes melted pictures when you try to use it. Brand new one. I pointed it at a glowing golden orb and it fried the camera.
Very peculiar story. So one thing that I want to focus on with this story is the bull or the cow. Now, very interesting that this Taurus-shaped constellation that we have in the sky is very much related with all kinds of deities, all kinds of female deities. And if you're interested about this, we made an episode about our Midwinter Fest. But interesting, the Midwinter Fest often is connected with the spring equinox, and this was in spring. So I think what we're seeing here is we're seeing a connection with the constellation Taurus, which is prominent in spring. So yeah, we're gonna dive into that a little bit more, but what you see here on the right, this is a screen capture of another video that Chris shared of where they had some kind of chanting or some kind of connection with other spiritual beings. And what you see is you see an orb, and from that orb is a being coming forward. Now, this is all of a sudden, it flashes onto the screen, and all of a sudden this being shows himself, and that is why we have this picture. Not very unlike all the other pictures that we've seen from the CE5 Contact. Now, I don't want to relate all of these things together, and especially, for instance, with Dr. Greer. Dr. Greer often is of the opinion that all of the extraterrestrials are benevolent and is mostly us humans who are malevolent. Now, I'm going to park all that because we've been talking about etherical beings for this episode. Now, I also want to mention this other type of sighting that has been going around. And if you saw my recommendation of the program in our last episode, then you might have encountered this guy, Jason Sands. And Jason Sands was in the US Air Force from 1985 till 2007. And he climbed up all the way to Master Sergeant. And he worked, for instance, at Area 51s. He's been talking about this in all kinds of interviews. And in 1994, he had allegedly a ET meeting when he was driving with some of his colleagues. He was driving on the road, and all of a sudden they saw this guy while it was very cold outside, and they stopped to meet this guy. And turned out he had no ears, and he looked kind of peculiar, but he was wearing a uniform, and he had a craft with him, and he was asking for things to fix his craft. It was something like titanium, and Jason didn't know it, and he asked him, like, do you mean titanium? No, that definitely wasn't it. And Jason, his story, definitely, he says that he was communicating with him somewhat telepathically, so he could hear what the alien was saying, but he didn't understand it. But he understood his mind that became projected with this language. And when he was talking back, the alien could understand it as well. And we have a depiction of what it apparently looked like, and it looked something like this. So on the left you can see a drawing of what he said that it looked like, and well, we went into AI software and we could see if we can kind of get an image out there, and it then appeared to look something like this. Now Jason gave him his jacket, and apparently when this ET person, he didn't get what he was looking for, he went off into his craft with Jason's jacket, and then he just flew up in a stepway kind of motion. So and for the ultimate quality of CBD oil, of course, you want to go to organica-cbd.com. I always forget the dash, but the dash is important. You go to organica-cbd.com, and there you get the most premium quality CBD oil that's out there on the market. You get a 10%, you get a 20%, they have a 30%, and that's the maximum amount that you really need to get your health in check. If you have any problems such as chronic pains or inflammation or whatever, the CBD oil, it helps. If you have problems sleeping, for instance, maybe you're thinking too much. I hope you don't think too much because you're laying awake of these episodes, but if you need that extra little bit of sleep, if you need that extra little bit of rest, you want to have a quality CBD oil. I give it to my dog because my dog, she has some little elderly bumps on her back. It helps. The other day I found out that the little bump that she has on her back, it shrunk, and it now has 2 little bumps. So I'm very curious to find out what it leads to. If you guys need something like that as well in your life, because who doesn't need good quality medicine that is not supported by any pharmaceutical company, but it's just a local mom and pop store that is really good quality, then you want to go to organica-cbd.com. Use the code ParadigmShift. You get a 5% discount. Over €100 you get free shipping. So go over there and help yourself, help out the show, and help out a local mom and pop store. All right, with that said, let's continue back to a regular episode. Yeah, that's Jason Sands' story. Definitely very physical, definitely very interesting. Now, what was broken about the craft, we don't know. It could have been its cloaking device, which is why perhaps could have been seen. Now, we don't know what happened to this, but yeah, it's very interesting that this happened in Area 51 apparently. But what was even more interesting is his description of this extraterrestrial. That would be blue skin and very big black eyes. And that gets me to my next guest, which is Barbara Marciniak. And Barbara, she's a channeler. So she is definitely psychically gifted, and she has developed her gifts over time. Ever since the 1970s to the 1980s, she started channeling halfway the 1980s. And then in the 1990s, she came out with a whole bunch of books. And these books, they came from the Pleiadians. Their star system apparently is within the Taurus star sign. And before Barbara actually had all these channelings experiences, she had an extraterrestrial experience. Whenever she started channeling, she said, I don't want any monkey business. I don't want to meet anybody. You can use me as a channel, but I don't want to see you ever. And the reason why she said that is because of this experience.
So I moved to Taos, New Mexico, and I had a very bizarre experience happen to me. In the process of recording my dreams, one night I was sleeping, and it was my habit, in order to remember my dreams, that I would drink a glass of water before I went to bed, so that I would have to get up in the middle of the night and urinate. And then I trained myself, when I woke up and was on the way to the bathroom, that I would always say to myself, where did I just come from? Where did I just come from? And then I would pull all these stories down and then stumble back to bed and go back to bed and just create this sleeping, breaking, sleeping, waking pattern, so that I could begin to break into that world. And it was just part of the training that I set up for myself. So I was sleeping, and I thought that I was getting up to go to the bathroom. And as I got up to go to the bathroom, I looked out the window, and I lived out on the mesa. It was very dark. I had a little adobe hut that I was renting from this artist. And I put my hand up to the window, and I just looked out the window like this, which has been something that I did my whole life. When I got up at night, I would always like kind of want to peek and see what was going outside. You know, who knows why? Well, we know why. And so as I was doing this is 1980, December 1980, something grabbed this wrist, and it felt like it was Superman or something, you know, a steel grip grabbed this wrist and yanked me. And I was gone. And I had never had an experience like this before, and it was startling, to say the least. I freaked out. That's probably the best way to describe it. I didn't know where I was. I didn't. There was nothing. I was just, something grabbed me. It was all black, and I was struggling. That's all I can tell you. I remember calling, wanting to call my neighbor's name, and I couldn't get it out, and I felt like I was just frozen, paralyzed, but I can't remember a thing about it. I have had major UFO investigators regress me and insisted that this is what happened to me. And so, of course, you know, no one can tell me what to do or what's happened. Only we can decide ourselves. And so I just am holding my own vision on what happened. So the next thing I remember, I'm back on my bed, but the struggle seemed like it went on for a while. And then I'm back on my bed, and I'm feeling restless. I'm feeling like I've got to escape or something like this. And I keep reaching over to turn the light on, and the light keeps turning into a candle. And that was my first clue that something bizarre was going on here, and that it wasn't a 3D experience, because I really thought I got up and was on my way to the bathroom. And so when this light kept turning into a candle, I saw these three blue beings standing around my bed. Now I'm laying down, and so they're not very high. They're perhaps this high, and they're very bright blue. If this lady here, will you, Diane, stand up for a second and show your blue? They weren't that color, but more royal on it, but there was no mistaking that it was blue. Very, very bright, iridescent, glowing blue with black eyes, as I recall, and a few little fingers, and I really freaked out then. And I can't even tell you, so long ago, you know, what I did, but I got out of it. Eventually I woke up, but before I woke up, what I saw these beings doing is that they were patting the air above my body. And now in today's lingo, 1997, I know, obviously they were doing something with my chakra centers, but I didn't know that language back then. And one was right here doing this above my third eye area. The other one was right here at my solar plexus, and they were using both their little hands, and they were going like this. And then the other one was at my feet. And I was frightened, very frightened.
So yeah, very interesting experience. So this all came before Barbara started channeling the Pleiadians. Now we don't know for certain that these blue beings with big black eyes, that they are Pleiadian. We don't know. They have often been described as Nordic looking people, or people who have water qualities or something like that. We don't know unless they really reveal themselves. However, The Pleiadian people who are speaking through Barbara are saying, we're not gonna land on the White House lawn. We're not gonna be there for you guys because you guys need to get out of your dredge yourself. You guys need to evolve. And that is why everything is happening on this earth. And so for you guys to really reach into yourself and to really come to your true heart and to really evolve yourself further. So they're really pressing the point of spiritual transformation and self-empowerment, doing it for yourself. Barbara is still channeling, and we're gonna listen to some of those channels later on. Some people have said that her channels have gotten a little bit darker over time, but then again, you know, our world might have gotten darker as well. However, if you're interested, her first books, which are these, they are very interesting. These are books that are very much recommended if you're looking for spiritual guidance on any kind of goodwill nature of our human capacities. I recommend reading those. They're of a very good nature. Now, for some recent channelings, she gives information about what kind of extraterrestrials are out there.
Some people have been visited, and not in the way Ed was saying earlier, but they have been taken up into ships and they wake up in crafts, or afterwards they have regression or something, and they remember that what appears to be that they were involved in experiments where sperm and egg were extracted from them. Has this been happening? Yes. Who has been doing it? Let's say that no good gods sometimes are doing it, working with American military and world military, actually. It's part of an agreement to, we'll give you this if we can take this. But there's also things happening in the dream state. Our vehicle was altered in this capacity, taken up in the dream state into a big, huge craft, along with many, many other people, many, 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 many years ago, 1980 or some such. And DNA can be cleaned and altered very slowly. It's done by vibration. And it's been happening with certain people. And they don't want to do the whole planet at once. You couldn't survive it. You do it with a few, the strong ones. You see how they adapt. And then they affect others. They start to raise the vibration. So on this level, that 90% of junk is being worked on and being brought out of dormancy and replaced almost energetically and sometimes literally. Some ETs will abduct humans and literally do probes, anal probes, vaginal probes, penis probes, and people have reported very, very painful, horrible experiences. These would be the lower vibrational ETs having made deals with governments. We'll give you technology, Earth people, and we will do genetic experimentation on the population, and you will say nothing, and you will hide it behind whatever. And those are long-term agreements that happened particularly after World War II. Then you have other beings who are here who take your energy body, not your physical body, your energy body. And some beings do bad things with the energy body, and some beings do very good things with the energy body, and they may take you up at night, and lots of you, and vibrational restore you. Big projects. How does this happen? How does this occur? You tend to think that physical reality is solid and real, and there's one reality and everyone is in it. Reality has more layers than an onion. You vibrate in certain layers, you move through different layers even throughout the day, but you don't recognize it. Because your neurology is trained to be busy and here and there and everywhere. That's why when you go into nature and you quiet down, it's easier to understand the switches of frequencies and the different layers of reality. So, there's some things to think about.
So there's a very nuanced perspective from a allegedly extraterrestrial source. So don't take it from me, take it from the Pleiadians. Now, you might be a little bit confused after all of this, because if we're dealing with a multitude of crafts, we're dealing with alien reproduction vehicles, and we're dealing with aliens that are malevolent, that are trying to anal probe me, or that we're dealing with benevolent spiritual entities that are out there as well. There's a chaos going on of all kinds of different energies that is multi-layered in our reality, and we're not even aware of half of it. We're not even aware that there's a pyramid flying through our thunderstorms. So what are we to do with all of this information? What are we to do whenever more things of this nature come out? How are we going to manage ourselves? What should we as a population do? Well, for that, we have ancient text to tell us what to do. So if you open up your Bible on Matthew 7, you can read the following. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravening wolves. By their fruits you will know them. Do they gather grapes from thorns or figs from thistles? So every good tree brings forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree brings forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, nor can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree that does not bring forth good fruit is cut down and cast into the fire. So then, by their fruits, you will know them. I hope that gives a little bit of clarity. So whatever comes forth to you in your life towards the future, think about, how does it make me feel? How am I aligning with this? Do I want to proceed with this? You might be looking at a smokescreen. You might be bamboozled. You have no idea what is out there just by using your knowledge, just by using your intellect, because we have already been looking at a shadow play. However, the oldest knowledge will always guide us forth. So think about what it is that you're seeing being produced, and therefore let your inner guide you. Now remember that in my last episode I had a clip about Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar's mentioning that one of the UFO crafts came apparently from an archaeological dig. Well, there's definitely some interest of these alien UFO crafts that is connected with all of our ancient sites. So for instance, let's have a look at this video. If you found any of this useful, if you liked this episode, and if you think that this channel deserves a like, then please give us a thumbs up. Please leave a comment down below. Make sure you subscribe because, this is something that we do. We're in the paradigm shift and we're taking you with us. For the rest of it, please visit our sponsors, druidsecret.com and organica-cbd.com, and use the code ParadigmShift. And if you do want to support our show monthly, but you don't want to see all our advertisements, then we have a Patreon account where you have an episode without any advertisement. So that's patreon.com/paradigmshift for you, and we'll see you next week. Bye bye.